It's a great pleasure to introduce Ruth, one of the people who I've always enjoyed working with. And I have to say, Ruth, on a personal note, has frankly grown into the position and matured, even though she was well equipped to handle it from the beginning. And we've seen a lot of change in the city, a lot of change in leadership. In a small city of 10,000 people, we're fortunate to have people of the caliber of Ruth Atkin, who's stood for election and served on our city council for all these years. For part one of our State of the City presentation today, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mayor of Emeryville, Ruth Atkin.
So Bob thinks I may have grown into this job, but can you all see me? So I have a lot to say, and I trip over my own words a lot. So I actually I'm going to be referring to some written comments. Otherwise, I'll be going off on tangent after tangent, and your eyes will start to roll and you'll start to walk out. But thank you for asking me to speak to you today. It really is a pleasure to come here for my fourth time and give you a picture of where we stand and also where our challenges are. So first of all, I want to get a sense of who's here. How many of you both live and work in Emeryville? We actually have one of the highest percentages according to the 2010 census of people who live and work in town. So I don't remember offhand the demographic count, but it's just interesting to know that we are still in some ways, despite our growth, that we're still a small town. So, and I also want to thank longtime resident Scott Donahue, who's now joined us on the City Council. Scott got introduced before, and Diane Martinez, also who just got elected this past November. So I know the other electeds have been introduced, but I just want to give a shout out to the two of you for joining the City Council, and I look forward to productive years together. So at one of our breakfast meetings, Bob and I had earlier in the fall, or later in the fall, when it looked likely I was going to be here before you today, I asked him, so what do you want me to talk about? I go to the table I'm assigned to. I was like, I'll talk about whatever you want me to talk about, whatever. So I will talk about a few things that was on his agenda, and then also kind of talk to you more generally about some other things. So in terms of measures U and V, Emeryville voters approved 2 citywide measures last November. The purpose of these tandem measures were to raise revenue. The first establishes Emeryville as a charter city. In California, there's 2 types of cities, general law cities and charter cities. And general law cities basically follow the general laws of the state of California. And charter cities draft their own charters, which can be very detailed constitutions of basically how they're going to function, or they can be short and simple. And we passed as short and as basic a charter as we possibly could. That basically says we follow the general laws of the state of California, except when it comes to taxation. And the tandem measure was Measure V, which allows city to collect real estate transfer tax whenever properties are sold. As a general law city, we collected 55 cents per $1,000 in property valuation for every real property sale as a general law city. Voters raised that to $12 per $1,000 in valuation. And this measure will greatly enhance the city's ability to raise revenue. And the revenue is needed because in 2012, as you've heard from other state of the city luncheons, redevelopment ended in California, and that basically cut our overall budget in half. So we've been looking for ways to kind of replenish some of what was lost. And I'll just give you an example, and Sabrina's going to talk to you, I think, in more detail about what the impact will be. But 2 notable sales closed in late 2014, and if they had been subject to the real estate property transfer tax, the sale of the office towers here, would have yielded about $3 million for our general fund. And the Bay Street Shopping Center closed, and that would have yielded even more money for the city. So we can look forward to those kind of infusions into our general fund when there's future large commercial sale. So the one thing I want to say is no other change in the governance of the city or its structure has occurred. We still have a city council manager form of government. The city council still selects the mayor each year, as Bob was saying in my introductory comments, introducing me. So nothing else has really changed. And I really, really want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the voters of Emeryville, for supporting both measures. The Chamber came out in support of both, and once again, I think the Chamber has distinguished itself as a breakaway chamber compared to what many other chambers throughout the state would have done. So thank you to the board and the people who attended that day very, very much. And I just want to say that's an example of how much more we can accomplish when we're working cooperatively than if we're working at cross purposes to each other. I want to alert the Chamber to direction that the council gave the city staff, especially the legal department, which is coming, which is a raise in the minimum wage here in Emeryville. And we directed staff to come back to us at the current rate of our living wage ordinance, and which right now is $14.03. It'll be adjusted again with the consumer price index in July. And it was part of my thinking when I proposed a minimum wage that would correspond to our city living wage ordinance, is that I wanted low-wage workers to be able to work full-time and not be eligible for any public benefit program. And this wage basically comes close. It's not to say that everybody who's a low-wage earner can work 40 hours a week, but the intent is to be able to avoid getting onto public assistance, which expanded Medi-Cal is 138% of the federal poverty line. So when I looked at this before last week's meeting, I did a little research for that. We will most likely include a provision that was similar to what Oakland voters passed in November about paid sick days. And we don't know yet when we're going to come back and look at any other details about this, but I do want to alert you because the timeline for adopting this might be as soon as July 1st, and some of you sitting in this room might need to make adjustments in your business model. So I just you can deluge me later, but I did want to alert you that that's coming. Now, thank you. The second thing that Bob asked me to speak about is the spillover that's happening from Silicon Valley and San Francisco to the East Bay and to Emeryville specifically. So we've all seen, especially read the Business Times, the skyrocketing commercial rental costs in both San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and documented spillover of businesses moving to the East Bay, along with a concomitant flood of people seeking more affordable housing here. And Bob asked me to speak to whether we're positioned to capture this spillover, and I will very enthusiastically and unequivocally say yes. I think we're positioned great, and I'll explain why. Bob, at that same meeting, said he thought employees were looking for certain things where they're looking for to make the work environment better. And he said they want amenities near where they work, places to go, have a drink after work, interesting places to frequent. And not surprisingly, residents want amenities too, and there's an inherent synergy in creating a more livable community that also makes for a more viable and vibrant business environment. When I was first elected to the City Council, I didn't understand this synergy, or the symbiosis that exists among all the different members of the community. So at that time, I believed in the very false dichotomy between residents and businesses, and I've come to understand that quite differently now. The city is one city, and our interests are inextricably linked to each other. We'll never be a smaller version of San Francisco or Silicon Valley. I posit today that we are the bohemian version of a great place to do business. And I want to give you some illustrative examples. I apologize in advance if I do not name your particular business. I don't mean to exclude, and this is also not an exhaustive list, but so apologize up front. So one thing that makes us stand out is the annual celebration of the arts. It's an early and ongoing example of honoring the talents of people who live or work here. And it's the single best attended event by the adult community all year round, and it really speaks to the creativity and innovation that exists in the artistic realm. I'm looking at our superintendent of schools here, so I qualify that the art exhibition as being the best adult event. Second, I directed a friend to get a cup of coffee within walking distance of my house, which was at Ruby's Cafe, and she came back saying it reminded her of cafes in Soho. When Rudy's Can't Fail Cafe opened, it arrived with its own following and was so successful it opened a second restaurant in Oakland. And taking a nod from Emeryville's history, we have a business called Rotten City Pizza. And we also have other small establishments that appeal to an after-hours crowd. Prize Fighter Bar is packed. Honor Bar is known for great bar food. We have Broken Rack. We have various gyms and health or fitness centers and numerous other small businesses that have found Emeryville desirable. I apologize again if I didn't name your business, but I really don't want to leave anybody out, but I just want to say that we already have small business amenities that are important to today's workforce. We were discovered when another trend exploded on our city streets, namely the influx of gourmet food trucks. Those operators knew we had a small gold mine amongst our daytime population, and they came in droves. We established a task force to work out the friction points between these mobile food operators and our brick and mortar restaurants. Regularly at the public market now, while the market is undergoing upgrades. I actually ate off of a truck over Martin Luther King weekend, and someone saw me and thanked me for bringing the food trucks here. I'm not the person to thank, but I'm glad that they're now part of the Emeryville scene. In another nod to our excellent business position, Google named us the e-capital of California. The city manager is going to talk more about what that means later on. So Google has taken notice of our little city that can. And in a third example of our business vitality, I wish to mention the biotech biomed corridor that includes Emeryville and West Berkeley and Wareham Development, which is inextricably part of that scene. Thank you, Rich. Last week I greeted a Bay Bio meetup, and I noticed that there was a group of 4 young adults who were kind of sitting by themselves and not mingling much with anybody else. So I came over to them and I asked them where they were from, and they were from the peninsula, because they had heard about the meetup and they wanted to check it out. And doesn't that speak volumes about people living in Silicon Valley who are already coming to Emeryville to check out the biotech, biomed environment here? So they're already coming and they're already checking us out, and we're already in a great position to attract people who might be looking for fresh opportunities. So I say that we are a bohemian version of up-and-coming business. We need to be observant about what the next trends will be and also to encourage more entrepreneurial endeavors. I invite anybody here to start branding Emeryville as such. For many years, I've seen the private sector lay claim to all things Oaklandish with T-shirts that read, "I hella heart Oakland," distinctive tree designs on caps and shirts, and it is past time for Emeryville to market its unique history and character. So if anybody has an entrepreneurial whim, I encourage promoting Mudflat Java or Metalworks Gallery or anything else that has a uniquely Emeryville feel to it. My third point today is I'm going to take a little poetic license because, as Bob said, this is my 4th time I'm serving as mayor, and I find myself holding pieces of institutional memory that fewer city council members and city staff have. When I first campaigned in 1999, I put out a vision of autonomous neighborhood councils in which neighbors would meet, discuss their own neighborhood issues, try to resolve them, and come to the city with their proposed solutions as necessary. I wanted to develop a relational infrastructure, and it remains my belief after all these years that urban safety comes when we are connected to each other, when we support each other, and when we're generally mindful of each other. My campaign was a bellwether of things to come, although I had no idea that neighbors would organize themselves electronically. First was Doyle Street Neighbors, who developed an email network spurred on by the redesign of an old abandoned railroad track, the 9th Street drill track, that fashioned Doyle Street to becoming the first big segment of our greenway. The Triangle neighborhood, Park Avenue, and other areas also organized themselves into electronic communication lists. Now Nextdoor, Spagia, and others are still in full swing. So as a rookie council member, I saw lots of things that needed changing, and 15 years later, I'm heartened to see ways that Emeryville has matured as a city. There are numerous internal organizational changes that most people here are never aware of. I want to give a shout out to the city staff who are here. I saw Serenity, I saw Maurice Kaufman, but internally the city has had to grow and develop so much over this period of time, and these are things that the general public may never see, but we've really grown. And as an example, a few city managers ago, I asked the city manager about having a Parks and Rec committee, a Parks and Rec department. And his response was that Public Works can just take care of our parks. We don't have enough anyway. And now we have an advisory Parks and Rec committee. We heard this committee gave the most valuable input into the redesign of the Christie Avenue Park, which is part of the public market redevelopment. And another newer committee is the Economic Advisory Committee that has both residents and business interests represented. And the establishment of these committees is another indicator that the city has matured and that our citizens are active and engaged. So the organization of the city of Emeryville, the employees, for helping become more skilled, effective, for growing in all the ways that we've done about, and we've learned a lot about maintaining and strengthening our public infrastructure. And thank you, Andy, for the water main work that you've done in town. I think that'll be that East Bay Mud has done, I think that'll come in very handy for us. Future goals to help in the maturation of the city include improving broadband access, the implementation of the Center for Community Life, which is now under construction. And for those of you who aren't aware of this joint use project, we actually had to change state law so that the city and the school district could jointly operate and this facility that will be a K-12 campus, but it's also going to have city services wrapped around the school, and will serve as a community center. And one of my goals really through the city is to see the city to offer something for everybody throughout the lifespan in the city of Emeryville. That's going to happen with the Center for Community Life. So I'm personally very excited about this. And it takes us to the next phase of becoming a full-service community. We have new tools to use in modernizing city service delivery. There's an app, See Click Fix. You see a pothole, you take a picture of it, you send it in, and then we can develop our inventory of when potholes can get repaired. And we have other quality of life amenities coming online too, which is more segments of the Greenway that will be completed. I want to close my comments today by talking about a global crisis that affects the future of life on this planet, which is our home. And I spoke earlier about relational infrastructure and public safety, and I think we can apply the same principles to ensuring the survival of our species and as many other species as possible. Right now, the Earth is facing tremendous damage. Many species are becoming extinct. We may not be aware of this as urban dwellers, yet we are aware in terms of our health outcomes. Our school district tells us our zip code has the highest childhood asthma rate in the county, triggered in no small part by the particulates emanated from the port and highways. What would it take for us to become more aware of the damage around us and to act against it? We must act as though we are all connected to one another. We must notice we are part of the environment. We must notice that we matter and we can make a difference. From the carelessness of a dropped wrapper or cigarette butt on the sidewalk to the numerous car trips we take as solo drivers, all of these actions belie our disconnection with the world around us. 40% of all of our air pollution in Alameda County is from transportation. The other major source of pollution is from the buildings and the energy they use. We must radically and fundamentally change how we do business if we want our worlds to survive. Emeryville drafted a climate action plan in 2006, which is being revisited by city staff and will be brought to the council later this spring. Our plan is to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 20% from 2004 levels by 2020, so that we're in 2015, that's 5 years from now. We've installed solar panels on City Hall. We've taken other actions towards mitigating our impacts through stormwater treatment, creating a more walkable city, installing bay-friendly landscaping, and now, this is kind of a cool thing that you may not be aware of, but we are a pilot site for hydrogen fuel cell cars, which they want to take out to the public market in about 2.5 years. So I want to thank the Emeryville Chamber for championing becoming a green certified business and encouraging others to go through that process. To become green certified, businesses must comply with environmental laws and regulations, conserve resources, and use environmentally sound business practices to prevent pollution. We have 25 green certified businesses in town, and thanks to all of them for going through those steps to become certified. All this is good, necessary, and too little. Development projects discuss impacts and mitigation measures. We must begin to talk about environmental restoration, habitat creation, not just about mitigating impacts. We cannot have business as usual. We must transform how we do business. We will not solve this crisis on a project-by-project basis. More importantly, we must act as connected communities in order to adequately address this crisis. Our city has been divided by economics, railroad tracks, and highways. It's time to bridge the gaps. We must be interconnected communities to address this. On a regional level, the County Transportation Commission put a successful ballot measure on the November 2014 ballot, Measure BB. This raises sales tax for transportation to a penny for the next 30 years. The expenditure plan associated with this tax measure calls for 48% of all funds to go to public transit, and it increases the pot from 5% to 8% for bike and ped projects, and as well as just doubling the size of the overall pot. The shifting priorities of this towards public transportation and what is called active transportation are necessary steps in this process and an important part of solving the overall puzzle. I'm very honored to represent Emeryville on the Transportation Commission and very inspired by the work of the Commission. 3 plans that are in development that you can hear more about later this spring, that together will address the pressing needs to reduce transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions, are a goods movement plan, an arterial plan, which are major streets like San Pablo Avenue, and a transit plan. Other legislative efforts to mandate reductions come from State Senate Bill 375, which mandates a sustainable community strategy, and plans for future development, which the Metropolitan Transportation Commission calls One Bay Area. This is a regional planning effort that recognizes that we're all in this together. So I'm promoting connections of all kinds, so I just think that we need to join together as communities to try to turn the tide on the destruction of the earth and give it time to heal. And I know we'll succeed when, that we will be succeeding when I see young people no longer drop candy wrappers in front of my house that I have to clean up, when I don't see smokers flicking butts out of the car window or stepping on them on the sidewalk, and when I see major polluters being held accountable for their damage. So we're all in this together. Thank you for bearing with me as I kind of wax on globally about an issue that is an Emeryville issue, but it's also a global issue. And thank you for this opportunity today, and I'll turn it over to the city manager, who'll be able to tell you actually more probably what you came to hear anyway about how the city is functioning and what we're looking at doing and all the rest of that. So without further ado.
Thank you, Ruth.
All right.
I'm delighted that you are mayor again. I remember a year ago when we had the State of the City that Albert, our chair, expressed his delight that the city manager was Italian. Well, you can imagine Albert enjoying that. And when Sabrina came up, she corrected him. She said, "I am not Italian. I'm Sicilian." Which was a really good line. Right? So I'm here to introduce a Sicilian who is really been a wonderful addition to a key leadership position in our community. We've gone through some interesting city managers and some well-respected city managers, but we have one who, and I love this, we have 5 members of the city council, all of them very different. And a year and a half, 2 years ago, when they selected Sabrina, some of them didn't like each other, but they all agreed about one thing. Sabrina Landreth was their choice to be the next city manager. And that honeymoon has continued to exist, and the rest of us are delivered, and you really want to hear her, not me, our city manager, Sabrina Landreth.
Hopefully the honeymoon doesn't end after I give this speech, but let's see if I can make this work. Okay. So I am here today as your, I would call me the chief bureaucrat of the city, and I actually think that's an honorable title. If any of you are students of political science, you know the history of the term bureaucrat is actually quite complimentary. So anytime you get really mad at me or the city government and you call, you know, "Oh, you stupid bureaucrats," just understand I'm going to take that in a really positive way. So as the mayor mentioned, you know, we have 2 new members of our city council that are both in the room here. But we also have the 2 continuing council members with Jack Asher and Nora Davis, who is the vice mayor. You know, really a lot of the focus last year was on what I just call stabilizing the city government. really in the post-redevelopment world. As the mayor mentioned, the city had about a $60 million budget with redevelopment. In 2012, when redevelopment went away, that was cut in half. We have a $30 million budget now. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. You know, as many of you are aware, 95% of our city here is in a former redevelopment area. So this really has been, as you can see, the incredible results of using redevelopment as a tool. Are really the poster children, but we really had to, you know, start to reinvent ourselves within the city organization. So last year, a lot of it was spent just on stabilizing city government. So that includes the budget, which I'll get into, organizational structure. We implemented, the city council approved in July, and we are still in the process of implementing really a major shift in our city's org structure. It's really the first time, I believe, in about 30 years that we've done this. So it hasn't been without some pains, but I think we're getting there. And then just some major initiatives that I'll talk about. So, not to the tears on the city budget. We passed our 2-year budget in July, and this is the first 2-year budget post redevelopment. Very, very big deal for us. But despite all of that, despite reducing our budget by half, we still are able to maintain a 50% reserve. This is a council mandated reserve. This is an incredible legacy that this city has in terms of its fiscal stability, and we're continuing that. Last year, we refinanced all of our city debt. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a tremendous amount of work. And it was to phenomenal successes. We had for one of our refundings, we actually were oversubscribed in the markets 3 times over. People in New York and on Wall Street were stumbling over themselves to actually participate in our refunding, which is incredible for this little town. Our capital improvement program, which I'll mention, which I'll talk about a little bit more, was also passed in July, which is a 5-year plan. It's the first plan that we have post redevelopment. The ballot measures passed successfully to help stabilize our city budget, as the mayor mentioned. Impact fees, which I will get into, development impact fees a little bit later. And we also closed 3-year contracts with all of our labor unions, which certainly helps us. So city budget, as I mentioned, is about $30 million. That's our operating budget. Where does it go? You're not, you know, I don't want you to have to memorize this. The main point that I really want to make here is that, not unlike a lot of cities, the majority of our city budget goes towards public safety services, which are over 51% of our budget. City revenues. So this is a really interesting chart for me as a kind of a budget nerd here. What I really want to point out is the fact that you can see in orange, which is, the property tax in our city here only makes up 6% of our city revenues. This is very, very different than most cities in California. The reason why this is the case is that, again, most of our city is in a former redevelopment area, so the general fund actually doesn't benefit from most of the property tax that is generated within our city boundaries. It's something that, you know, people keep coming up to me saying, oh, you know, home prices are up, or these, you know, commercial properties are flipping over and, you know, raising their assessed value. It actually is not impacting the general fund directly. That's important to know. On the other side, we do have our sales tax does make up a bigger chunk of our city budget, at about a quarter of it. Business license, and then TOT, which is our hotel tax. And this is actually, we're hoping, will increase. We have a new hotel that's going to be coming online in the next couple years, so that should help matters. And then, as the mayor mentioned, we have the new transfer tax, which you will notice is not in there. This is from our adopted budget in July. This is before we had the transfer tax in place. So that actually hasn't been included into our city budget yet. So I just want to mention a little bit about our capital improvement program, because it does affect a lot of you all out there. This chart just shows you, you know, before redevelopment went away, almost all of our capital projects were funded by redevelopment. Over the last 3 years, we have had to hustle, get creative, think about how we are actually going to fund all of these critical projects. And we're not talking about the nice to haves. We're talking about the must haves, the sewers. We're talking about the sidewalks. We're talking about the street lights. In June, staff actually was able to put together some a lot of one-time funding, but also now that we have some other new revenue sources, put together a 5-year plan that the council adopted, and you can see there kind of some of the categories of the projects that we are working on. Over the 5 years, we actually were able to fund 80 projects, which was more than we initially thought, and we have about $100 million over those 5 years. Now, again, this is based off of some projected revenues, so this can change at any time. But you know, One project that I wanted to highlight there is the South Bayfront Bridge, and that's also tied to the Horton Landing Park over on 53rd. This is a project that has been in our general plan, I believe, since maybe 1988. It's something that's been, you know, it's something that has been actually the topic of litigation with the state. I am pleased to report that we have some funding, about $16.5 million, that's been in contention to help advance this project that the state has been fighting us for. And 2 weeks ago, we actually received word from the Court of Appeals that we actually received a favorable ruling from the court that we can, in fact, keep that money, which was tremendous. We're anxiously awaiting the state's petition to the Supreme Court, which we imagine they will, because as soon as our decision hit the wires, we had other cities around the state issuing their own press releases citing our case, saying, "Hey guys, I think we're going to be okay. Look at this Emeryville case." So that wasn't necessarily a good thing for us, but within the next 2 weeks, we will hear whether or not the state is in fact going to petition the Supreme Court. We anticipate they will. But it by no means that the court will take up the case. So we are going to move as quickly as we can to try to get this bridge built. You'll also notice there the ECCL, the Emeryville Center for Community Life, which the mayor mentioned, and I'll touch on a little bit later. So just some of the major capital projects that you will see out there that may affect some of you when we are working out in the community to try to balance the timing of some of these, obviously, you know, with the holiday season and other things that are going on. Our sewer rehab project, big sewer rehab project that Public Works is working on Powell, out in the Marina, Horton Street, and on 54th. We have a new skate spot that is going to come in at Joseph Emery Park, which is the park right behind Arizmendi there. Christie Avenue Bay Trail project. We are doing a massive remodel of the fire station out here in the peninsula. We have a leaking roof and other issues, and so right now we actually have our the engine that's normally located out here in the peninsula is over on Hollis Street. Major rehab of our senior center, sidewalks, Hollis Street reconstruction, and the ECCL. These are just examples, but these are, I actually wanted to put these in here because, like I said, these are not nice to have projects. These are must do projects that really have been on hold until we were able to identify some funding. Emeryville Center for Community Life is going. For those of you that haven't been out on San Pablo between 47th and 53rd, this is a project that was dreamt up, I think, 13 years ago, if I'm getting that right, by city manager and superintendent, you know, many times ago. It's been in the vision stage. We actually, in August, passed the city council approved a 66-year joint occupancy agreement with the school district. Historic, many years in the making, and the project is going, and it's fully funded. Very exciting. This is our only city gym and pool that'll open in the fall. Hopefully, sometime maybe we can push it up to the summer. The high schoolers that are currently located over in Santa Fe in Oakland, we're hoping to move them in the winter, and the elementary later on. Another part of this project that is really exciting to city staff is that we are going to have our very first public library in the city of Emeryville at the center. In fact, I am even getting calls from residents in Oakland who are asking me when the Emeryville Library is going to open because they can't wait to come and use it, which is very exciting. And we're also going to have a wellness center there, which is right now funded through the county school-based health program. Where kids in the schools and then eventually people in the community will be able to go there for dental and other medical services. Our seniors will be able to go over there and receive care. So this is very, very exciting, and that's projected to open in winter of 16. I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but the ballot measures, as the mayor mentioned, did pass. We are very excited on the fiscal side of things about this because it does give us some additional revenue to help backfill that lost $30 million that I mentioned earlier. The tricky part about this is going to be, how we actually budget for it, because you can't predict when some of these large commercial properties are actually going to go up for sale. So those revenues will be treated as one-time revenues, and we actually have built in a base of what we think is just kind of the bread and butter of residential sales. It's on the order of magnitude of probably $400,000 to $500,000 that the city is going to see every year, which is huge for us. Development impact fees. This is another one. It's been a busy year. Another one that we have worked on. This is in the city of Emeryville only had a transportation impact fee in the past. This was before I started. The council had given staff the direction to go ahead, again, in a post-redevelopment world, go and look for additional sources of capital funding. And we brought forward this proposal to add these new development impact fees that developers pay when they come in for their projects. We increased the transportation fee, and then we added a parks and recreation fee, and then also an affordable housing fee. Our entire source of funding for affordable housing was demolished when redevelopment went away. As you all know, living in this area here, we are in a crisis point in terms of our affordable housing. And so the council, I think rightly so, approved this. These are initial projections that we think we're going to generate from just looking at the 5-year horizon of development projects that are coming down. And you can see there for affordable housing, it looks like a lot of money, $41 million, but it's nothing close to what we used to have. Labor contracts. This is always my favorite one. I will tell you that it's been a very active year for our HR staff. The city came to terms with all 3 of the represented labor groups. This was SEIU and 1021, and then also our administrative management employees, and then also our EPOA, or our police officers union. All of these were open at the same time, which was a nice gift to walk into. And I would say that, the parties, we negotiated in good faith, and it really was an agreeable process to come to these 3-year contracts. And the relationship between city and labor groups has really been strengthened through this effort, and I really do want to thank the city council for giving us the support as staff to negotiate these and give us clear direction. And I think it's gone a long way in terms of improving employee morale. Public safety. So when we were looking at putting measures U and V in front of the voters this last fall, we engaged a pollster to go out and not just poll the community or the voters on the measures themselves, but also to ask some of the standard questions about how are you all doing? What would you like to see in your city? What's the most valuable service? And they came back to brief me on the results of the poll. They almost couldn't speak. And I said, what are you seeing? And they said, well, we work in hundreds of different cities, and we have never seen numbers like this before. And I'm thinking they're talking about the ballot measures and thinking, oh, this is, going to be easy, no problem. They actually said, no, the approval rating that your residents have for not just your city, but for your police department specifically, we have never seen anything like this. And they said this is every city manager's dream. It's phenomenal. Our police department does amazing things. We have amazing officers. We deal with, this is not Mayberry. We are, in the urban core. We deal with a lot of very difficult situations. We've been dealing with the recent demonstrations that have been coming into Emeryville, not just sitting on our borders here. And our police officers, I saw one of them one night after he'd been up for how many days straight. And he actually was on his way home because he said he ran out of clean underwear. But I told him, I said, I'm not going to say, thanks for going above and beyond in terms of the service that you all are providing, especially in light of the high stress situations with the demonstrations. But I said, I just want to say thank you for doing your job, and thank you for doing it in the way that you were trained. And I think our officers are really are setting the tone and are just incredible. We continue to contract with Alameda County Fire. Our fire services is no longer part of the in our and it's been tremendous for us. We benefit from the additional resources that the county brings: hazmat, water rescue, and emergency preparedness. Community services. This is really an exciting area of expansion for our city now that we have more families coming into town. We're really, serving, it's cradle to grave. We have everything from our Child Development Center to our after-school program that coordinates with the school district, which has increased 3 times over in the last 2 years. Our senior center, people come from as far as the foothills to come to our senior center. We have 1,700 active adults that are members of our senior center. It's phenomenal. Special events, we're getting out in the community. We have, we're ramping up for when the ECCL opens up again. And we email or send out our activity guide every year to 12,000 residents. So overall, the economy is looking up in town. Retail sales are up, but I will tell you, we just had our sales tax revenue briefing with our consultant yesterday. We're not looking at, 10, 12% growth in our sales tax. I mean, we are seeing just a, very steady 2 to 3% growth, which is just, barely keeping up with the cost of doing business. Hotel revenues are up. That is, I think been something that's been over the trend over the last couple of years regionally. Office vacancies are down. This is something you all, I'm sure, in reading the newspaper, know this. Sales volumes are up, and really it's the median sale price that is up, also in relation to our neighbors at $235,000 to up to the $350,000. That was from 2013, and I think it's probably even higher now. And unemployment is down to 3.5%. It's amazing. Some new expanded businesses. These are just examples. This is not meant to be exhaustive by any means. You can see there we have, Panda Express has come in over at East Bay Bridge, Smashburger, Charming Charlie, I'm told by my daughter that's where we have to go shopping. We have a new school coming in, and then Griffles, which acquired half of Novartis. And then in late this year, we also have Ulta Beauty, and then Nordstrom Rack is coming in at East Bay Bridge. Major projects. We continue to be very busy. I don't want to go into too much detail on any of these. I'll just kind of run the pictures through, but we have these 4 major projects that are currently under construction. We have these 4 that are already approved and will be breaking ground soon. As you can see, the 3706 is up on San Pablo. It's a 100% affordable project that we're very excited about. And then more major projects in progress. The marketplace is going to be overhauled. We have the Nady site, which is over on the aquatic park side of Expression College, and then the Sherwin-Williams mixed-use project, which is also in the planning process. This slide, it might be a little bit hard to see the numbers here. What really matters is the last bar. This is the building division's activity. So things have not slowed down. Google eCity Award. Notice that my photo is not on this one. It's a slow death of me. But we're very excited. Google did award us, out of all of the California cities, they did award us the eCity Award. And you can see there it's to recognize the strongest online business community in the entire state. So that's all of you. And these cities' businesses that means that they're using the web to find new customers, connect with existing customers, and fuel their local economies. So we are very, very excited about that. Future work. So we're not done. As I mentioned, I kind of saw 2014 as laying the base and stabilizing things within our city government, our city structure, so that we can continue to advance some major initiatives. The City Council has, as the mayor mentioned, given us the direction on the minimum wage. We're working feverishly away to draft the proposal to bring to them next month. To raise the minimum wage to the $14 effective July 1st. As the chief bureaucrat, there are some technical issues that we have to work through in terms of enforcement and administration, but that is a big policy initiative that city staff has been so directed to bring to them, so we'll be working through that. Homelessness, this is another big issue that has been frankly, it's a regional issue. And when I first started here, I started to be contacted by Emeryville residents who were looking to me to try to help the Oakland homelessness issues along the border. Feeling, rightly so, very frustrated that, they were going into the morass of Oakland to try to solve something that was affecting their quality of life. So we sat down as city staff and said, okay, well, what is it that we are doing on homelessness issues? And, frankly, not a whole lot. I mean, I think a lot of our activity was just based off of just move people along and see if they, kind of cross the street and go over to Oakland, and then it's not our problem anymore. And I said, well, are you okay with that? And universally, all of our city staff said, no, we're very frustrated by that. So we have been working really over the last 18 months to try to bring the partners together regionally with our neighbor, with Oakland, and also with Berkeley and with Albany, to try to think about things in a more strategic way, in a regional way. And it's these are initiatives that the City Council has been very supportive of, and they actually authorized us to really take, I would call it a toe dip, this last winter into joining this North County homelessness strategy, where we are helping to fund warming centers and some winter shelter beds, where the council has also directed us to think creatively, look at ways in light of redevelopment going away, not just the dollars that went away with redevelopment, but also other tools that were there, to think about ways where we could actually support as a city more affordable housing or different affordable housing, and has also directed us to bring back some ideas on rent stabilization. Whether that is rent control in some form or a rent stabilization board like some cities have. We're working through that, so that'll come to the council sometime this spring. Again, this is not meant to be exhaustive, but I will say, a lot of what within City Hall we have been working on and talking about is increased community engagement, and that means community at all levels. So that's, whether it's the business community, whether it's, the kids who are using our rec center, whether it's the 25-year-old who is riding the Emeryville who doesn't even know where City Hall is. We've been really thinking creatively about how we can engage this community, increase communication efforts on a lot of levels. We have a new website. We're looking at different technologies to provide better customer service. Right now, this is hard to believe since we are the Google eCity, but the city actually does not accept credit card payments when you come in and want to make a payment at our front desk, which is absurd. So we're working on that. See Click Fix is a very cool tool that's going to launch next month, which is you see a pothole on the street, take a photo with your phone, and you can email it over to that man right there, and he'll go out and fix it. But embracing a lot of these tools that a lot other cities are doing, and it's time for us to, frankly, get on board and then and to do it even better. Social media, another thing that we have not done well here, and we are looking at actually launching a social media campaign so we can actually push information out and then also receive information better from you all. The city-school partnership is continuing. It's ramping up. The ECCL will be open before we know it. The climate action plan, which the mayor mentioned, we're working on some really creative efforts, and we're going to be bringing an update to the council on the CAP in the spring. We have, as she also mentioned, this pilot program that we're doing with AC Transit and UC Berkeley and Toyota, which is we have staff driving around in some of these fuel cell hybrid cars, fueling up at our AC Transit station down the street. And we have a big city logo on there. And so it's been a big demonstration project, and so far received really positive feedback from folks. And our economic development strategy. We have, again, in light of redevelopment, rethinking things a little bit in terms of our economic development strategy, and that will be coming to the City Council also in the spring. And then the Emery go-round. The Emery go-round, as you are all probably very familiar with, takes about 1.6 million riders a year. We're a square mile. If you can imagine having all of those vehicles on in this square mile, and I hear from many of you all day long about how horrific the traffic already is in town. So the Emery go-round is obviously, it's a critical, it's not a city service, not run by the city, but it's obviously critical to the city. City staff is working right now to working with an engineer to come up with a ballot measure that's going to go out to the property owners to renew the funding source for the Emery go-round. And this may mean also having the residents pay into it. Right now it is almost entirely funded by the commercial property owners. So that is more to come. The Emery go-round is really, I think, suffering from some of the challenges of its own success, some budget issues, operational issues, some legal challenges, and so we will be having community meetings, I think, starting next month, and really welcome you all to come and express to us how important it is to you, and even changes that you'd like to see in it. Let's see. Oh. So, I just want to leave you with a couple notes. One is, as John mentioned, I came on board at the end of June in 2013, so I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary here, which is hard to believe. In some ways, I feel like I've been here forever. In some ways, I feel like I just got here. But I, had my performance evaluation with the city council, with my bosses, and they, gave me my review, and they said, "Do you have anything to say to us?" And I said, "I just wanted to relay a message from my husband." And they looked at me kind of, what are you talking about? And this was a thank you from him to say thank you for for hiring me and for giving me the support that they've given me, and the fact that I don't come home every night and complain about my job. It's tremendous, and I actually will tell you it's not just the city council, it's all of you in this room who've been really supportive of, it's been a very, very busy 18 months here, very busy. And you all have given me, very honest feedback, been very supportive, willing to jump in anytime that I've asked, and I just really want to say thank you. And also to the city staff, especially, the few of you that are here. We are moving things forward in an incredible way. And last thing I will say is we had one of our all-hands meetings with our city staff, I guess 3 months ago. And as part of that, I had just heard maybe a few days before that somebody made the comment to me of, whatever, it's good enough for government work. And it just got under my skin. And I did a little research on the history of that phrase and shared with our city staff, and I hope that they've embraced it, which is, and I don't know if any of you are aware of this, and maybe this is folklore written by a city manager, you know, but I'm going to believe it, which is in World War II when, you know, you had increased production that was going on, you know, with the ships and with our airplanes. There was such a high quality QA process that you had to go through in order to have, you know, as a private contractor, in order for something to pass muster, so that, you know, obviously the military could use. And so they used to actually say, okay, let's look at what you have, run the tests on it, and they would say, oh, finally, good enough for government work. And I think it's about right. So I just want to leave you with that is a, you know, a culture that we have within City Hall that, you know, long precedes me. It's something that I continue to carry, that the City Council continues to push, and just know that that's, you know, the high bar that you all have helped set for us, and I love that bar is so high. But please feel free to, you know, push back, call me a bureaucrat anytime you want to, and just thank you for all the support that you've given.
Sabrina and Mayor Ruth Atkins. Sabrina, thank you so much for your wonderful presentations. And Sabrina, I don't go home and complain of my job at night either. In the daytime, it's another story, but not at night. And I want to thank, again, Mayor Ruth, our chief bureaucrat, Sabrina, our presenting sponsors for today, the Bank of Marin and Wareham, are good friends, and all of you are good friends. As we leave you today, I want to thank you all for your continued support of the Chamber of Commerce. We do have, for those of you who are members and have joined us or renewed for 2015, I have some of the plaques in the back of the room. If you haven't received your plaque, please take one. They're standing up in the back table there. With that, I want to thank Albert Rapola, our chairman. Albert, thank you so much. Thank you for the great job. John Gooding, thank you in the introduction. Thank you to all the elected officials here today, and thank you for the lovely tribute, everybody. It's a lovely way to go. We'll all stay in touch. Keep smiling, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year at this event and otherwise, and we're adjourned. Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone.